about a little over 50 folks now, so we're 3 minutes in. We only have 45 minutes, and I want to make sure we leave time for questions. So I think marketing, if we want to go to the next slide, let's kick it off. Stop guessing, everybody. Let's talk about predictive audiences and how we actually get from the storefront to your audiences, right? So as I said, I'm Danielle Kramer, SVP of Sales here at GroundTruth. I live in Chicago. Thank you everybody for joining. My esteemed co-host today is Matt Knight. I'll let him introduce himself, but he is humble, so I will tell you he is our Chief Technology Officer. And then if you are one of our self-serve platforms clients from the past or now, you might also be familiar with one of our other brands and platforms called Addy. Addy is our local advertising marketplace for B2B and SMB customers. If you haven't heard of it, go check it out. We own both products. Both platforms are amazing, and Matt built both of them. So he's going to be talking about what the advancements have been with our latest news with our ZeroToOne acquisition that was just announced probably 8 weeks ago now. So Matt, if you want to say hello, if you
Hi
guys have any
guys.
excitement or gripes, this is the guy.
Thanks, Danielle. That was incredible. I'm also here for the good vibes and emojis in the chat. But yeah, I'll take you through some of the tech. I'll try to keep it relatively low nerd, and just kind of walk you through it. It's amazing that it's just 8 weeks post announcement, post merger. But I'm excited. We're moving super quickly. We've got our first rollout of audiences in the platform, and we're just rolling thunder. So you'll see a lot from us in this area. So I'm excited to have you guys join and kind of walk through what we've got for you.
Them. Okay, we're going to go over just a few ground rules. I'm sure you guys have been to a million webinars in your life, but just so that I can sleep at night so everyone knows how we're playing here, there is a recording happening right now. You will be able to play it back later. It will be emailed to you after this session is over. You can submit your questions through the chat and we will get to them at the end. We'll do about 30 minutes of the content and then we'll save 15 for your questions. That's really what we're trying to get to here, let you know what we're talking about and then reinforce that with hopefully some excitement at the end. So we can get into it. So as Matt and I mentioned, we are now part of ZeroToOne.AI. You can think of ZeroToOne.AI as a predictive behavioral intelligence company. That is the headline umbrella of what they have done prior to being in partnership with GroundTruth. So obviously, if you're here, you've worked with GroundTruth before, or maybe it's been a few years. We appreciate you coming back and learning what is new here. So what we're doing as a unified company is unifying prediction and scale. So ground truth before, as you know, we've got billions of real world behaviors and location signals. And what we do with that is turn it into first party deterministic audience data, right? So you can have your real time on premise targeting, you can do event targeting, you can do behavioral targeting based on location. We've always believed that your physical behavior is much more indicative and a higher indicator of your true intent than simply what you were doing online, right? Online is a little bit exploratory. It's a little bit, so I might look up a Maserati that I think is really cool online, but I'm not buying a Maserati in the real world. I probably never even go to a dealership, but I do go to Aldi and buy cheap vegetables. So, right, you guys hopefully know, love, and remember what we do at Ground Truth here. What we're doing with ZeroToOne now as one combined unit is expanding that. So, like it says, unifying prediction and scale. So the technology that is the underpin of everything that ZeroToOne does, and now everything that GroundTruth and ZeroToOne do together was developed by researchers at Carnegie Mellon. I assume you're familiar with Carnegie Mellon, but if you're not, it is one of the top two AI programs in the entire world. I looked it up yesterday to make sure that that's still the truth. It is the truth in the whole world, not just the country. Carnegie Mellon actually had the very first undergrad program that was a major in AI. So as you can imagine, the minds and the people that come out of this program are wildly intelligent and have been focused on AI for many, many years. So one of the folks that developed the model that we're going to talk about is Bebe Lee, and she is on our team here, works with Ground Truth and ZeroToOne now. So an amazing group of people that we've come together with to merge these technologies. And I'm sure you guys have been around the industry enough to know that when companies come together, it's either a large company that's buying a small company and uses pieces of it and maybe sometimes sells it for parts. And it's not always the core thing that it was before. Um, or you get sold to PE, and then you're, jack of all trades. You're one of many things that is in a bag of sales tricks that can get lost in translation. This was very, very prescriptive and very deliberate that Zero to One chose Ground Truth to continue being Ground Truth and really merge the technologies to enhance what we've been doing in all of the years that you've known us with this kind of predictive intelligence. So you can think of us as the industry's first closed loop predictive intent ecosystem. So what we can now predict is who is going to act next. And then I would actually argue more importantly, when they're going to act. Right. And then because we have the Ground Truth platform, we can activate that at scale the same way that we have before. And then we can measure that it actually happened. Right. So who is doing what, not looking backwards. Today, we're going to be specifically talking about our first application of this joint enterprise. But in the future, you're going to hear more from us of what the further applications of this look like. And you can think of this new company as a customer intelligence platform with predictive analytics and an omni-channel activation suite. So that is a mouthful. We can go to the next slide, please. So Zero to One and Ground Truth, dynamic intent prediction audiences. This is what we're focusing on today. This is what is going to be live in the platform on Monday next week. We have always leaned into real world behavior, like I said, and dynamic intent prediction. It feels like a mouthful. So let's think about it as human beings and as marketers, right? We as people are inherently dynamic, right? I will not drink wine out of a stemless glass, but I will believe in the 5 second rule, right? I am a dynamic gal. I will do one thing that might not make sense with the next, but my behaviors are always changing. Sometimes I go to La Colombe for my coffee, but if the line's too long, I go to Starbucks, right? My point in these silly analogies that are very true is that humans are human. And by minute, on day to day, our circumstances are changing and our needs and our wants are changing. Therefore, our intents also change. So having dynamic intent be predicted and then created as an audience is the way that we marketers can reach them on their dynamic basis, right? Everyone in the ecosystem right now, I believe literally everyone will tell you that they have a lot of data. So do we. A lot of providers have signals. So do we. It's about what you do with those signals and how you define which of those signals are important. And then when to activate on those signals is really what makes it unique. So we are moving from solely observing and understanding what has happened in the past, and we're moving to observation plus anticipation. You can go to our amazing stat here. So 90%, this is a pretty bold claim. And I want to break down what it means to say that 90% predictive accuracy makes tomorrow's customers today's. So if we think about a customer, let's say the model will say that a customer is going to go to a chicken shop in the next 7 days, right? On that 7 day window, that window will close, and that ID that made will either validate that they had a visit to a chicken shop within that time period or that they did not. And then the model will compare how did they do against the prediction for those IDs. So 90% of the time, the model was right, and the ID can be validated that they went to that chicken shop. So in the slides prior to this, I was mentioning that the timing is really important, that the days in which the consumer comes in and out of an intent mindset is really important. And if you think about that, if I was in a static behavioral audience, which I think we all know that the general behavioral audiences as they exist before, you're put in a bucket and you pretty much live there for a long period of time. Some might be refreshed every 6 months, they might be refreshed even monthly, but what we do here is daily. That model is updated to observe what people are doing in the real world, because as you likely do as my intent and my behavior changes. So then we would look at, did someone once visit a QSR 6 months ago? No, we've updated to say, did you visit that chicken shop just yesterday? And if you don't update it and have that kind of a real-time signal, you're really missing out on understanding, like, who are the loyalists? Are you wasting your money on the people that are going to go anyway? Is that person a vegan now? I know that's like a silly thing to say, but it's a real thing that if you sit in an audience for way too long, the truth that was the truth then may not be the truth today. And that is the really important piece about predicting with accuracy, and not just looking at past segments that are static and are not updated regularly. So you can go to the next slide, please. I really love this slide. I feel like it makes it really visually obvious what we're trying to do here. Predictive and AI are like obviously the most buzzwordy things on the planet. I don't know if anybody here has Instagram. Corporate Bro is one of my favorites. Like ad techie. He was like an ex Salesforce guy. He does some really funny stuff. And even just today, there was something I watched this morning and it said every keynote speaker, and he comes out and just says agentic, and everybody claps, and that's the end of the reel. But it's very funny because that is real. Matt and I were at Possible with a large number of our teammates just last month in Miami, where I mean, if I had a dollar for every time I heard AI, agentic AI, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you guys right now. I'd be doing something on a beach. It is everywhere. And the word predictive also has historically been used in almost like loosey-goosey terms that it's not as specific as the way that we're using it here at Ground Truth and Zero to One. So what other people are calling predictive is built on historical data. And again, it's not throwing any bones at what was before because that was what was capable at the time. We are now in an industry where, a lot of people are using AI to create better processes. They're, streamlining their workflows. They're shopping in AI agents. All of that is good and well, but we are specifically focusing on using AI to predict behavior and then measure that thing happened. So if you think about lookalikes, and again, you guys are hands on keyboard, you're probably very well versed in our platform and many others. Lookalike models have been around forever. In fact, they have been around since 2013, which is 13 years ago, which I feel like as a human being doesn't really feel like that long, but in the world of ad tech, martech technology in general, 13 years ago is an eternity. So if you think about AI usage, even just in the last 12 months, a year ago, generative AI has gone up 242% in 12 months, right? So that's 2.42 billion users that are now engaging with AI in just a year. So it is time, it is way long overdue time that someone, Ground Truth and Zero to One, are coming to market with something that is truly predictive and forward looking that is not using that legacy definition. So when you see that and you hear that from other partners, I would really ask you to challenge them. How does your model work? How are you actually predicting? How in the future are you understanding what those anticipated behaviors are going to be, not just what somebody did 5 days ago, a month ago, 6 months ago, because it is likely not the same intent as today. So I hope that's a good intro to you guys of like why we're here, why we're excited, what we're doing, what this union means. And I'm going to pass it to Matt to dig in a little bit more about the how.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle. So a lot of big words, we're going to be fully buzzword compliant here, guys, like Danielle said. Um, but let me try to break it down a little bit, make it approachable so that you can understand how the technology works and really what the value is of the tech. So as Daniel said, our co-founder, Dr. Bebe Lei, who leads the AI program at Carnegie Mellon, top AI institution as she researched, her team built the underlying technology. And after many, many, many hours of collaborative engineering between the teams over the last 8 weeks, these audiences are now going live in the Ground Truth platform. Um, you can think of this kind of, predictive audience concept as mapping out the research and routine activity that consumers take before they make a purchase, right? So, where do they go? What do they see? What do they search for? Maybe what do they buy? And identifying consumers who will convert, not only will in the future, but when, at what day, in what week, in what time box. And I'll talk about how that works in a minute. Um, this is an enterprise grade framework. It ingests over 15,000 behavioral signals across 7 million points of interest. And we evaluate all of those device IDs every 24 hours. It's a total of 2 billion evaluations every 24 hours to produce these audiences. What comes out of that, those predictive audiences, really the root of it, is what we call a behavioral signal chain, which is a mouthful. Let's go to the next slide and I'll try to break it down. What is this, behavioral signal chain? I get asked this a lot. Um, if you think of how an LLM works, like we've all, used ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, um, that AI, LLM AI is really good at predicting the next word in a sentence. So, for example, when you're having a conversation with the chatbot, it's able to string together very coherent sentences and conversations because it has extreme accuracy on what the next word should be in that conversation. A large behavioral model, or what we call an LBM, is very similar, but Instead of predicting the next word, it predicts the next behavior from a chain of real world events. So, for example, it can determine the next best offer based on a sequence of events that a consumer has taken. And that essentially is the prediction. That is the predicted intent of the consumer. So there's a little bit of a flywheel effect here that happens, right? First, we ingest millions and millions of behavioral signals that are largely disparate. We sequence them into a chain of behaviors, predict the next likely event in that chain, and then we verify that those predictions actually occurred for accuracy. I'll talk about how we do that. Once we hit that threshold of accuracy, we can create an audience from those predictions and activate that audience in GroundTruth's Ads Manager platform. So we have a quick video to kind of illustrate the process. Um, it really starts with the data. The LBM ingests digital, physical, location, and all sorts of other consumer activity signals and distills them down into relevant behaviors. They're organized into sequences to create a chain of events, and we map those patterns across days and weeks to catch the precise moment a pattern spikes into an active intent chain. So you can kind of think of a prediction as the next logical link in the chain. So we'll predict what that behavior will be and put it in a time box of when it will happen. Let's go to the next slide. This whole sequence runs every 24 hours. We're constantly looking at the what and the when and refreshing that audience daily with those predictions. Inside of that cycle, we remove consumers from the audience that where we don't predict a high degree of intent. So if we see maybe a lower scoring intent, we'll remove it. So it eliminates waste in a campaign. So you're always targeting the best possible audience at any given day. Um, that verifiable intelligence is important. I mentioned this earlier, and Danielle showed the big 90% slide. Um, this is a really strict verification process that we do. Um, After a prediction window closes, we have a training period for the AI model that we go through. And every prediction window, whether it's daily, weekly, 48 hours, different segments of time boxes where we're making that when part of the prediction, we'll replay the real world tape. So we look back on the data that we got a week ago, a day ago, and we see if that event that the AI predicted actually happened. If it does, great. We use that accuracy as part of the whole accuracy of that audience segment. If it doesn't, we retrain again. We determine what in that event chain could have been different. We retrain, we relearn, and then ultimately look again, verify again. That process is what is very unique about this type of offering. And ultimately, we get to that 90% accuracy benchmark and it's automatically activated on the platform. So this whole process, all of our predictive audiences are scored for accuracy. We figure out the who, the what, and the when, and then we refresh them in Ads Manager every 24 hours with the most relevant devices, the most relevant consumers, and remove anything that's low degree or low accuracy to make sure you're always targeting the best possible audience at any given day of the campaign. So this is it, guys. Danielle's going to walk us through the first set. This is like phase one of all the audiences that are going to be going live in Ads Manager. Um, and
Yeah.
Danielle, you want to talk about timing for launch?
Yes. So live today for some of our beta clients are all of the audiences that you see on the screen here. Every major vertical from the high velocity 24 to 48 hour impulse windows, right? So again, really thinking through what is the human behavior that is tied to these categories and is predicted to be within these windows. It is less likely to happen if you think about McDonald's as our example that we like to use at a certain point. Everybody might be a McDonald's intender, but it matters when was the last time that you went to McDonald's, and then predicting what is your personal cadence of your ID of when you might go back, right? It's not every single day. It might be every 7 weeks. It might be every 30 days, right? So thinking about the timing of a person's behavior is what's really important here. So we have these broken out in somewhat generic windows. And then it also goes to deep 30-day high consideration purchase cycles, right? So if you're in market for something that's a little bit more expensive, or you're going to book a trip, right? You're not doing that in 24 hours. I mean, you might, but then you might regret that, but there's usually a longer consideration cycle for these types of things. So these are all pre-created. There's a reason that we don't call them off the shelf. It's because they're not off the shelf. They are not static that you could just buy from the grocery store in a can that is, not thinking about what the future window looks like. So these are pre-created because these are the places that people have asked ZeroToOne and GroundTruth to create these in the past. There is a custom version of these audiences that we're going to talk about at a future date. But for right now, 8 weeks into this merging of technologies and acquisition of talent, this is what you're going to be able to activate. So you can go to the next slide, please. So the power of the prediction window. So like I was saying here, the intent range, right? So the LBM, like Matt was saying, predicts the in-market behavior across those customizable windows. The impulse window, right? Are you focusing on the high velocity QSR, coffee runs, dining, immediate impulse retail? It's much shorter from when you're going to make these decisions. And then we want to take you out of the model if you have already accomplished that thing and are not likely to go back into it, right? So, like I said earlier, in that 7-day window, if you're going to buy a chicken at a chicken shop, you now have completed that purchase. You're not likely to go back in the future for another 7 days, 10 days, depending on what your personal behavior line looks like. Purchase cycle window, like I said, verticals like automotive, home improvement, travel, electronics, this has all been considered by the team and by the models. And then the daily freshness. I saw someone asked in the chat, how do you do predictions in a self-service model? And this is how. It's because the model refreshes on a daily basis, and that is automatically fed into Ads Manager, the GroundTruth system. So there's nothing for you to do except for to target these audiences that are refreshing on the back end themselves, which actually leads me very nicely into the next slide of the performance, right? So we can tell you all day long about how cool this sounds. And I think a lot of AI sales materials, touts what it could be or how cool it might be. But these are our definitive results that we've had in the tests that we've done in the early days, that there is the user is 5 times more likely to visit compared to a standard GroundTruth audience. Now, in no way, shape, or form are we saying that you shouldn't still use GroundTruth audiences where GroundTruth audiences make sense. But if there is a place where there's a ZTO audience that is matched to that, there are better results when it comes to visits. So the GroundTruth audience essentially sits inside of the ZTO audience. You don't have to do both. You can do one that is like the mother audience. Somebody was calling them sister audiences earlier, but I think I'm going to go with mother audience. I think it sounds cooler. So the mother audience will give you a lot more of a better performance, right? 3x cost efficiency in media costs. That's amazing. You obviously are going to be spending less money on impressions that are not relevant and that don't matter for people that are not currently today in market to do the thing that you want them to do. So of course, you're going to have cost efficiency there. We're expanding your targeting footprint by 50x over standard segments, right? We pride ourselves and still do about the precision at which the deterministic segments that GroundTruth has. That is why they're valuable. This is now in addition to those types of tactics where you need something that is that precise. You can definitely still do that. But adding in these segments are expanding not your footprint in terms of what is available to you, not footprint in terms of, radius or neighborhood or location, right? Those things still matter. We can still do those things. But I'm talking about the available impressions that you can bid on or that are in your wheelhouse that are, again, in market for the things that you want them to do. And then if I haven't said it enough, they refresh 24 hours, which is a huge differentiator. I don't know that there's anybody else in the marketplace that can claim that right now. Next slide, please. Very, very, very exciting. Ready to activate an ads manager on Monday, June 8th. So this coming Monday, these will all be in the platform. Your CSMs, if you're working with a CSM or a CSA, are very well versed on these. As you can see in the screenshot here, it's pretty easy to find. It's in the dropdown. You can just type it in. We didn't really want to go through a demo because it's just about as simple as it looks on this screen to activate. And the whole point of this is that it shouldn't be a difficult thing for you to create a complex audience to do this prediction. The model, the AI is doing that for you. That is the whole point, that you can be strategic and you can think about what matters to how to reach your customers to bring them into your store. If you work for a company or at a company that has a door and or are selling a product that lives inside of a place that has a door, this strategy is for you. It is at minimum worth testing, and we would really love, love, love to partner with you guys on seeing what those results looks like. So before we go to the questions in just a minute, I just want to go over some best practices on the next slide. So again, we want to make sure that we're avoiding over layering. I think we give this as a general best practice for everything in the platform. You don't want to make your worldview so small that there's no one left to target except for yourself and the person next to you. I always like to think about this as a dating app. If you want only blonde hair, blue eyed guys that are 6'5" and older and work in finance in Wyoming, I don't know how many people are left out there that are on Hinge. Very silly analogy, but it really makes sense, right? There is a finite amount of things that you can do when it comes to actually targeting people. So don't overlayer, use light overlays, and don't stack multiple audiences on top of each other. Also, give audiences time to perform. This is, again, general rule of thumb, but make sure that you're not tweaking too fast so that you don't give the audiences in the model a chance to work. I also always think about this of like if you're sick, if you have a cold and you take Zicam and you eat 5 bananas and you have an orange and then you take a run around the block and you do a cold plunge and you feel better, which was the thing that made you feel better? You have no idea because you tried to over optimize on how you were going to get over being sick, right? So I say that with being sick very, very not often. So I would encourage you to over optimize in that front, but not in our platform. Autonomous optimization. So audiences are pre-optimized by AI. So you don't need to build or manually create anything. There's no and or statements. You don't have to do any Boolean logic. Like this is already happening for you. And then the result, of course, is less manual targeting, less times you have to be hands on keyboard. Pick the audience that makes sense for you, let it run, see the results, and it is, of course, going to lead to better performance. The last slide, if this is if you take a screenshot in your mind of everything that we said to you today, kind of in a nutshell, that predicting who will act and when, and then of course measuring it is really what the power of the dynamic intent prediction audiences are. They are refreshed daily, to put another point in the 24-hour refresh bucket. No onboarding time required. This is automatically happening within our platform. You don't have to pay any third-party fees to onboard these audiences. It's automatic. They're there. And then, of course, they are only available within Ads Manager as of now. The next slide is probably the most exciting part, that as early adopters to these audiences, you can access them on Monday at $0 additional cost at this time. This is going to supercharge your campaigns and experience the power of true predictive AI. And then finally, before we get to your questions, like I said before, we have some earlier adopters. We have some results that you saw on that slide. But if you are interested in showcasing your brand success, it can be an agency-wide, it can be at the brand level, you can be SMB, whoever you are, we want to know how these are working for you. So all we need from you is a confirmation that you're interested and you're actively using these segments. And then we'll work together to create a case study and then socialize it to also, get you some PR and some notoriety that you are embracing, the next generation of what predictive AI is going to do. So with that, we would love to answer some questions.
Yeah, we have a few actually in the chat already or in the Q&A already from anonymous attendee. So hi, anonymous attendee. By the way, Danielle, amazing hinge analogy. Love that. Um,
I'm married
uh,
now, so I didn't get the 6 foot guy. He's only 5'10", but it really worked.
Also not in Wyoming. So,
Not
actually, a question that relates back to that layering analogy, actually, in the chat is, does it pull only future prediction or does it also combine the historical? So, what's really interesting is, go back to that slide where I was talking about how much engineering went into this to integrate the two platforms. When we were evaluating the AI predictive audiences against our own location-based audiences, what was interesting is that we found that our location-based audiences were in fact inside of the whole universe of the predictive audience. which makes sense logically when you think about it. Our location-based audiences, deterministic audiences, are based on location signals where we see devices in particular areas. When this device was in a store, it sent a ping. If we see that happen inside of, for example, a fast food restaurant, a QSR, we capture that device as part of a QSR audience, right? We don't see all the location signals of all the devices in all of the United States. We see a small fraction of them. The predictive intent is much more malleable in terms of capturing a much wider data set, not just location signal, but a number of other data signals that I shared earlier. So those audiences are much bigger, but they do in fact include that historical location-based audience as well. So anonymous attendee, back to your question, it's both. So if you pick the AI audience, you don't need to layer in a location-based audience because chances are it's inside of that predictive audience already. There's a question about custom audiences. You can create a custom audience. Not yet. We are rolling out also to be buzzword compliant an agentic audience builder where you can describe the audience or describe your business or your target consumer. It will give you all the demographics for the audience and then build that audience for you in the platform. Stay tuned. We'll definitely do a webinar when we roll that out in the next month or so. Um, we had questions about spend.
I like this
Yep.
question here, Matt.
Go
How
ahead,
do you
Danielle.
actually use the feature on Monday? Will it just be a section that you can find on GroundTruth? Do you have to sign up for it?
It's actually right in the Ads Manager platform. So in the audience targeting, when you set up your campaign, you can choose location targeting, audience targeting. In the audience targeting section of Ads Manager, just type in AI, and all of the AI audiences, AI predictive audiences will appear. Just type in AI to kind of trigger the search, and you'll see the full catalog of those 40 audiences that Danielle said. So yes, Monday you'll see those live. And if you have questions, reach out to us. We can certainly help you. But they will be showing up on Monday morning.
There's another question here. Is the same ad spend minimum and limits?
No limits. As
I,
Danielle said, these are
again, with the
free.
overlayering and making sure that you give it a chance, I would say in our platform in general right now, there is a zero minimum spend to get started. So if you're a new customer, of course, we want you to spend as much money as available to you for you to test. But as your strategic advising partner, I'd want to make sure that you put enough against it to make sure that it'll actually work. So no hard and fast minimums, but I would make sure that it's meaningful enough to get enough impressions for it to be statistically significant.
Yeah, agree. And like Danielle said, run a test. Run a test. There is no minimum, so take advantage of that. Um, yeah, highly recommend. The performance we're seeing on these is, in fact, don't take my word for it. Please run a test and see it yourself. But it's extremely impressive. What else do we have here?
Oh, here we go. GroundTruth manages the ad for us. Do we need to get in touch with our reps to have them use these audiences for us, or is something they're already looking out for? Yes, happy to hear that one of our managed service clients is on the phone as well. These are available on the managed service side right now. So you can certainly reach out to whoever your team is there, and they're available to put on any of your media plans, and they can tell you a little bit more about it.
Yeah, there's one here. Can audiences be targeted for local places? Yes, you can overlay geographic filters, city, state, zip, DMA, custom locations. You can overlay them with the predictive audience. Those two work together in concert. And then Nikhil had a question. Does someone who has never bought a certain item, for example, never bought a burger at a specific burger chain, would they ever be included in an predictive audience segment? I'm assuming you mean. Um, Unlikely, right? So if there is no intent, if there's no behavioral consumer intent that consumer showing to be interested in buying a burger, then it would be unlikely that they would pass our 90% accuracy threshold, and we probably would not predict that. But it does depend ultimately on their behavior. Um, that's a good question. I would say no, and it's conjecture, of course, but unlikely because if they've never ever done it before, unless they are showing new intent, new consumer intent, which could potentially put them in the segment, um, it's unlikely that they would have done it before. So this is a kind of extreme question, but consumer intent changes, ebbs and flows based on purchase behavior, and activity. There's potential. Maybe somebody's not a vegetarian anymore and they're deciding to come out of start eating meat again. I don't know, but hope that answers your question, Nikhil.
We do have another question. How do these compare to current ground truth audiences when it comes to driving visits, to generating clicks, etc.?
Yeah, there was a stat slide that we showed. We are seeing a significant increase in visits as well as clicks. Anyone that's running click optimized campaigns as well as clicks. In general, the performance of these audiences is well above what we're seeing on the location-based audiences. And that's due not only to the predictive nature of them, but also the 24-hour refresh, like we said. We remove any devices or consumers from those audience segments when we don't see a high degree or a high propensity to convert every 24 hours. So that's certainly helpful. We're capturing new intent and eliminating intent maybe for users who have already bought the thing, done the thing, gone to the place. So that's certainly helpful in terms of conversion. Those audiences are much less static. They also have a significant amount of scale. Like I said earlier, location-based audiences are, deterministic by nature is a smaller scale. When we're taking in this much more data signals, we can expand the scale of that audience. So you have a much wider universe to target. Like Danielle said, don't cut that down to 6'10" finance guys in Wyoming. But as long as you've got a decent universe, you'll always see much more conversion because you've got more candidates in that segment to target to. And when the conversion likelihood is as high as 90%, chances are you're going to see more visits and clicks. And that's exactly what we've seen in the last couple of months of testing. So that performance slide is a good one to kind of snapshot in your mind. We'll share this recording with you. You can go back and see some of the stats that we saw as well. And like I said, don't take our word for it. Please run a test. And you'll see those visits are well above what we are seeing in the benchmark of the more traditional audiences.
Awesome. I think that answered why not use deterministic data only. Isn't this just another modeled audience? It's a shots fired. Where do we go with that?
Ooh. So modeled audiences are different. Modeled audiences work on historical data, and then they look at specific characteristics of a device, and they find other characteristics that match that device, and that's how you create a lookalike. It is a modeled audience, of course, but just because two devices or two consumers look alike doesn't mean they have the same purchase intent or they have the same visitation intent, right? They're similar, and there is some truth to say that, two similar consumers or devices sometimes behave the same way, but sometimes they don't. Or sometimes they already visited the place or they bought the thing. And so targeting them is wasteful. So this is very different actually than a modeled audience. Looking at a specific consumer or a specific device's chain of events, those behaviors that all ladder up to a specific moment, and predicting what that next moment will be when is how this is, so much different than finding two devices that are similar based on what one did, assuming the other one will do the same thing. That's that's a very different type of approach. And like Danielle said, lookalike audience has been around for a long, long time. And so, this is certainly an evolution of that, going on 13 years later. Prediction of a single device's kind of event chain is where we're heading with these predictive audiences.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, now we're just about up on time. There's one more visual we wanted to show you guys here just to tease our next iteration here. Matt, I'll let you do the honor since this is your baby.
Yeah, so next up, we will be giving you a sneak preview of the new Ads Manager. We have streamlined the buying flow. We've heard a lot of feedback from customers, smoothed out the edges, worked actually directly with customers who are hands-on keyboard to elevate some features like, for example, simpler retargeting, the ability to clone a campaign from one to the next, as well as choose different packages or premium placements in your campaign placement process. So that's cool. That's a whole new buying flow that we're going to be releasing in the next month or so. I'm hoping you'll join us. I'll walk you through that whole process. We've also got some enhanced creative upload features, really simplifies creative management, which is sometimes a bear when you're managing your own campaigns. And the icing on the cake is we're going to be releasing an AI agent. So if you don't feel like clicking through the buttons in the screens, even though it's streamlined and simpler, um, you can chat with an agent. Tell the agent what you want, where you want the campaign to run, what media type, what your budget is, audiences you want to choose, any other targeting. If you can describe the campaign in plain English, the agent will listen, ask any questions that to capture information that maybe it's not getting, and it will create the campaign for you. And instead of starting from a blank slate, you have a conversation, the campaign gets created, and you can go edit or tweak it, or you can flight that campaign just by clicking one button instead of several. So that's coming. Stay tuned. I hope you will join us on that. And I'll walk you through all that new fun stuff.